Good morning, tubes. It's Friday morning. I hope you have a great weekend heading into it. I'm going to do a follow up on my measurements mess from yesterday. And we're talking about inches and meters. It was just kind of confusing. I mean, it was all correct, mostly, that I think. But the truth is, in America, there's a federal institution, used to be called the National Bureau of Standards. Now it is the NIST, or it was moved into the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, this organization defines those measures, those rules, how they're done, if they work, if they're repeatable, they become industry standards, and we know how to do things. So what I was trained under was the National Bureau of Standards. Every instrument that I serviced and put a tag on was traceable above me, around me. As long as I followed the procedures, that instrument was certified to what actually are global technical standards. These are standards developed, they're out there, they're open system standards, they are international standards organizations. So even our huge, very precise National Institute of Standards works with, in union with, a global Bureau of Standards that's basically a part of the EU nations, but it's a part of all nations because this is science. It's fundamental science. What one nation discovers in science, all other nations either know already or will discover, because science is a common way of understanding the planet for every person on the planet that can understand science. Does that make sense? So these standards institutes is really what I was pointing to. When you go back to the accuracy of an inch, the accuracy of a millimeter, the accuracy of weights and measures, these things are tuned down right now. We measure out to an atom. The unit of mass is defined as a number of atoms. That quantity is called a mole. That's a science, typically chemistry term used. It is the number of atoms in whatever you're trying to measure. So very precise. We're measuring to an atom, one atom's level. We can do this out even with hydrogen atoms, the lightest atoms we know of. It gets more difficult. So these are the measurement secrets. These are the secrets behind the secrets. Even your measuring cup that you buy for baking goes back to those standards, whether they like it or not. Global, international standards for measuring anything that you can speak to being measured. Why is it important? That's the knowledge where we learned how to measure elements. That is where we all agreed this is the correct way to measure an element. It's the correct way to measure it chemically, the energies inside whatever reactions you're trying to have. It is microwaves flying through space, going from one cell phone to the next. It is even magnitudes more complicated is radar, where a signal is sent out through the atmosphere with all kinds of atmospheric variables taken into account and understood, and a little blip hundreds of miles away shows up on a screen that tells you where that plane is. That is precise measurements. We could go through and talk to how the angular movement of the radar antenna timed with the pulse of the radar spinning around at so many RPMs a minute in that radar dome up there, and how it can be so accurate in space, how we can use an array of solar dishes, microwave listening dishes, to look out into space and see a supernova happening. If that is not incredible in itself, that is not a miracle of human intelligence, then my idea of miracles is much different than yours. So that's where the inches were meant to go. The inches were meant to go into the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is the U.S. base for the measurement sciences, the hard physics of measurement, the standards that every instrument manufacturer, that everything that gets measured falls back to, is that institution in America and its sister, its bigger brother actually, in Europe, because of the amount of open research done in Europe. This is a big difference between Europe. Open systems, open data, open source, open information is a big key in how Europe is doing development. It was actually a business paper that I wrote that got ignored and never should have been, because that method of business is big in Europe. Why does that matter? Open systems, open technology, international standards organizations are why where's the camera? I'm pointing at the cell phone here. This cell phone works. It works because there's a handful of people keeping a handful of information that is thousands of years in human knowledge, tens of thousands of years of human knowledge. It's truly amazing. This one's too long, but talking about how we measure so precisely, why we measure so precisely, why big data is such an important tool across this planet. And the folks with the supercomputers, the billion-dollar federal budgets, very well understand this. And those same folks' bosses are paying preachers to teach us stupid. Truly. These same folks, these billionaires, are more than happy to have some preacher talk to you about a young earth, when the basis of their fortunes is the facts of our planet, of mineral resources and wealth and raw materials and our nation's requirements for them. So, if you got this far, again, thank you. It's hard to tell what to do with bits of knowledge that are so fundamental to how the sun works and keeps us alive, that putting it together can make you nervous. Understanding it can make you nervous for where it could go, because it opens up possibilities in your mind that aren't left to faith. Peace out. Happiness, love. Another one too long, but Merry Christmas.